So optimists, this is what they usually do. If something happened and it went well, they usually interpret that as meaning that it's personally, it's something about them that caused this positive outcome. And then pessimists do the exact opposite. It's not easy to turn a pessimist into an optimist.
Is that the road to depression?
So there's a really tight link between depression and pessimism.
If I've got a friend that's a pessimist or a partner or a husband or whatever it might be, how do I get them? We talked a little bit about it there, but how do I get them to become more of an optimist? Because I want to be surrounded by optimists. I want my company to be full of them, like pragmatic optimists, but still people that believe that, the future is going to be good and we're going to do great things for all the self-fulfilling reasons you've described. What do I do?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to mention that about 30% of how optimistic we are is genetically determined. This has been shown from twin studies, but that still leaves 2/3, right? Mm-hmm. I think the best studies on this comes probably from Martin Seligman, where he actually did experiments where he got people who were somewhat pessimistic, even slightly depressed. And the approach that he took is to change what he calls interpretation style. So optimists, this is what they usually do. If something happened and it went well, right? You sold your startup for a lot of money, you had a project and it was successful. They usually interpret that as meaning that it's personally, it's something about them that caused this positive outcome, right? And it is something in them that's quite permanent. Let's say my project went well because I'm a hard worker, right? And, maybe I'm intelligent or whatever. And then they say, well, if I have those skills, that means that a lot of other things are going to work well in life, right? If I'm a hard worker or if I'm good with people, that also means that I'll be a good dad, for example, right? When something negative happens, they tend to do the opposite. They tend to see it as circumstantial, right? This negative thing happened. Okay, so I didn't put a lot of effort in this, but not because I'm not a hard worker. I just didn't put enough effort because I was distracted by something else, or, this other person just happened to have a better proposal. So it's circumstantial. That means that they don't take that as evidence of how am I going to perform in the future, right? So it's really different interpretation of negative outcomes and positive outcomes. And then pessimists do the exact opposite. When something bad happens, they say, this bad thing happened because of me, because of a trait that I have. And because I have this trait, let's say I'm bad with people, that's going to affect all the rest of my life and all these future projects. When something good happened, it's circumstantial. Good thing happened, I got the job, but really because they didn't have any other candidates. So what Martin Seligman did is he taught people this interpretation style. He taught them whenever something good happens, this is how you have to think about it. You have to think about what is it about you that caused this positive thing to happen, right? And how is that positive trait or whatever skill, whatever thing you did, how can it affect other parts of your life and other future outcomes? And the opposite for negative. If something negative happened, I don't mean don't take responsibility, but are there circumstantial, right? It could be something that you did, but it doesn't have to be permanent, right? You happen to be in a really bad state because, I don't know, something else. Your parent was sick or something. So he teaches them, the people, to kind of interpret this, to find these reasons for the positive and negative, and it seemed to work to some extent. Now, it's difficult. It's not easy to turn a pessimist into an optimist, but it had some effect on their well-being and even on their physical health as a result.
Is that negative explanatory style of saying, okay, this bad thing happened, it's because of me, it's because I'm not good enough, whatever, is that the road to depression?
Yeah, so there's a really tight link between depression and pessimism. So pessimism is a symptom of depression. It's an actual symptom. And so what we see is people with severe depression have a pessimistic bias. They expect the future to be worse than it ends up being and worse than the evidence in front of them is. People with mild depression have no bias at all. This doesn't mean they're accurate. They can make mistakes, but on both sides. So sometimes they expect things to be better. Sometimes they expect things to be worse. But overall,
realistic.
They don't have a bias.
Happiness. One of the things we talked about before we started recording was Scott Galloway said on this podcast that happiness looks like a U-shape throughout our lives. As in, when we're young, we're at a high level of happiness, and then we kind of dip into our 40s. I think from what I read, when we hit our 40s, that's kind of the lowest It sounds kind of morbid, sounds kind of grim, but that's our lowest point of happiness, and then it kind of curves back up again as we go into the last sort of chapters of our life. Is that accurate? Because Scott didn't provide any research, and I've mulled it over, and
Yeah. No, so this is true. It's based on many studies and studies involving thousands of individuals, up to like 70,000 or more in a country. And it's been shown in many, many countries. So not just in the Western world, in many, many countries, almost all countries around the world. So exactly what you said. Kids and children, they're happiest and the most optimistic.
Oh.
Then it goes down and reaches rock bottom in your midlife, as well as optimism does. So actually, in middle age, you stop having an optimism bias. So your optimism bias is greatest in children and kids. It causes go down, down, down. And then really, there's no optimism bias in midlife, on average, of course. And then it starts going up. You become happier and more optimistic until the last few years of life, which is counterintuitive to our image of the grumpy old man, right? And it actually stays there until the last couple years of life. The difference between countries is that the dip, the point where it's lowest, actually is a little bit different between country and country. I think in the US it's about 40. It's relatively early. I think in the UK as well. But then some countries it's much. I think like Italy might be 50, Greece as well, like 50 to 60. And then there's a few countries where you don't see that. Russia is one of them, Romania, and I forget, there's another one where you actually don't see, they actually just become, less and less happy in those countries. We don't know why that is that specific case.
I'm 30 now, so I'm heading right down to rock bottom as we speak.
Oh, you've got time. I'm about to turn. So I'm looking forward.
Oh, so you're on your way up and I'm on the way down.
Well, not quite yet, but I'm about on my way up.
Okay. And this links to, I think, chapter 5 in your book, where you talk about how the chapter's called Humans Are Bad at Predicting What Makes Them Happy. And one of the startling things is you say that children don't impact our happiness positively. Now, I'm under the impression that children make us ecstatically happy. Well, it's difficult, but from what I've heard from people, I thought children are something to really be looking forward to, but you seem to assert otherwise in your book.
So this, first of all, I want to say this is just the research and the numbers, and I'm not just saying this, but my own experience is the absolute opposite.
Bear in mind, her child is upstairs, and he's watching this.
Leo, no, but it's absolutely true, because it's funny because of that research, and I wrote this is in my first book, The Optimism Bias, which I wrote before my kids. And I believed it. I mean, that's a data. What are you going to do? And that kind of got me worried, I have to say, about having kids. I was a little bit worried about the fact that children don't make you happy. You become less happy.
You become less happy?
When you have children. That's what the research.
Really? I didn't see that.
Oh, sorry. That's what you said, right? Because children don't make you happy.
Yeah.
Right.
But I didn't know there was, I thought that they didn't make you more happy. I didn't know they make you less happy.
Oh, no, it apparently, the data shows, there's a little different points of data. So for example, there's one piece of data that shows that this was done by actually Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize winner, where they asked a large group of French women to say how happy they were throughout the day. So I don't know, every few hours or maybe at the end of the day, they said what they were doing and how happy they were. And they found that the least happy people is commuting. Mm. But then I think the number 2 least happy was being with their children. So I have to tell you from my own, this is an anecdote, an N of 1. My children really make me extremely happy. I love being with them. It's contrary to all the research. So really? I truly, I'm surprised, Before they were born, I was thinking, look, if I don't like them, we'll put them in boarding school. And my mom was like, I don't think you want to put them in boarding school. And I was like, well, we'll see. And then no, absolutely love having them around. So, but that's just an N of 1. So I don't know. And of course, your own experience, unfortunately, even as a scientist, shapes the way that you interpret the data. Mm. But look, I'm sure having children can be difficult, and it depends on your life circumstances and all of that, and temperament of the child and so on. And so I'm sure it could be difficult.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.